What enlightenment?
Peter, sorry, chair has started.
We're on.
It was too good.
Good evening, everybody. Quick before we start, just a warm welcome to our new Deputy Park Consultant. And just to let everyone know, we are streaming and recording as well. Okay. So, any apologies for absence, first of all?
Apologies from Jamie Wright, Martin Dory, Alex Blewett, Mike Dorr, Luke Reeson, Lorraine Corrigan-Turner, and County Councillor, Councillor Sean Tilby, who are both at the network panel meeting that's been called, at short notice, and from Cornwall Councillor Showback.
Yeah. Thank you. And declarations of registered and non-registered displayable pecuniary interests. Non-registered, registrable interests. None. And dispensation. Okay, on to the minutes of full council. To receive, confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held upon the 13th of October. I propose we receive, confirm and sign those. Thank you. All those in favour? Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's everybody. Thank you. And the minutes of committees. To receive and note the minutes of the committee meetings listed below. So we've got first of all the planning committee on the 12th of October and the 26th of October. I propose we receive and note the minutes of that one. Okay. Those in favour? And all those against and abstain. Okay.
Yep.
And then on the 20th of October, the Oversight Committee, propose we receive and note the minutes of that one. Thank you. All those in favour? So, thank you very much. Okay, on to the recommendations. So first of all, from the Planning Committee, resolve that the Planning Committee make a recommendation to full council that BSTC engage a planning consultant to review the Bude Neighbourhood Development Plan and advise on the process to strengthen its ability to protect our community in the current climate. And I think I'm going to head over to Sean, Chair of our Planning Committee. So if you
I can say some words, but I don't have anything necessarily planned. I think the recommendation itself is fairly explanatory, but for anyone in the audience and anyone that's not in the planning committee, it's picking up a piece of work that was already on our kind of project plan, which we've set aside in lieu of other things that have cropped up, and we're kind of picking that piece of work back up to just essentially look at the document as a whole and maybe thinking about contemporising it, like bring it up to date a little bit in line with other new bits of documentation that are now kind of being used in planning, like
Development plan.
the Cornwall Council DPD, and we've already started talking to Cornwall Council officers and Chris Sims, link officer, about this. So this is more like bringing in an expert essentially, and I did write down that there is already money in the reserves for this because it was a previous project, so I think there's £16,500 set aside to do some work, and obviously that could cover the cost of a consultant because that money is unknown, like we don't know how much it would be to actually do the work that we don't know what work needs doing, if that makes sense. I'm not being very clear. So.
okay, so it's an initial engagement with
Yeah.
them, basically, to give us a better idea.
So I should have written some notes and something. So that's broadly what we're thinking, is to kick off that piece of work in an official way with an expert, because we're not planning experts. So yeah, just to do that, if everyone is happy with that.
Okay, yes.
Just one point, when we did it last time, there was a lot of involvement of the general public in the meetings. As long as the consultant can do that, set up meetings so the general public can have their say, that made it quite valid and meaningful. Just to pass it.
So initially, the work to be done is more to find out if we need to fully review it based on the concerns we have.
If you ask a consultant, they will say, yes, of course you do.
It's kind of more complex than just like we're going to review it, because that may not be the case. If there's things that we can do that don't require a full review that needs to be ratified through a referendum,
I understand.
then those things can be done. But we don't know that yet because we haven't actually got the consultant. So this is like the pre-work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we shouldn't underestimate the importance of a neighbourhood development plan. And historically, it has helped us see off another big development in Bude, which we felt we didn't need at the time. So that was purely on the back of that document. Last time around the block, it did quite right, Paul, have lots and lots of consultation. And I think that that would have to happen again if we were to go for a full revision of the neighbourhood development plan. Right, but what we can do is we can do a light touch revision, and if the planners see that it doesn't significantly or materially change the underlying principle of what the document is, they might let it through, but that has to go through scrutiny of Cornwall Council planning officers.
Okay.
Kevin,
Yeah.
did you have your hand up?
Sort of. I had a passing thought. Is there anything in the pipeline, either from central government or from Cornwall Council, which is going to significantly change the rules? So, for example, are we making a really good plan to play for our current rules, but there's a potential rule change just around the corner? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but
I can answer one half, which is Cornwall Council have recently reviewed their local plan on a 5-year cycle and have decided that it's fit for purpose, so there's no changes proposed around the local plan. And we do have the planning and project document around climate change coming in. So we know the Cornwall Council and Cornwall situation. I don't think anyone can answer what the governments are thinking. The council put off a review a couple of years ago on the basis of the government were then talking about changing the planning rules. But who knows?
I went on some training about reviewing your neighbour development plan, and one thing they were quite strong about was they said don't wait for the government's latest thing, because you could be waiting years or they could just surprise you. So kind of their advice was, if you need to get on with it, get on with it. So hopefully we'll see with this consultant whether we need to get on with it.
Yeah,
So, if there aren't any more questions, I'll just check before I. So, if I just form that into a proposal then.
No, it's just
yes.
it's to
Oh,
endorse.
okay.
what's
Just
there.
to endorse.
Yes, exactly. Or you resolved
Just
to.
read it out. Yeah.
Yes, that's the recommendations.
Okay, so you just say.
Approving that recommendation.
Okay. So all those in favour of. Does that make sense? Is that right?
Yeah.
Sorry, not done that before.
I'll second it at the same time.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Is that everybody? I think. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Okay, and on to the Oversight Committee. That the Oversight Committee recommends to full council that the grassed area behind the Parkhouse Centre be used as an accessible memorial site with a wave bench and planting, and to work with the Royal British Legion locally to achieve the desired outcome. The Town Council need to investigate commissioning a landscape designer.
Especially me.
Town clerk, sorry. I wasn't sure. They need pre-planning application and feasibility of moving the tank trap or traps from Crooklets Beach to the Parkhouse area with a view to completion to coincide with Armed Forces Day in June 2023. So any questions? Yes, Paul?
The tank traps at Crooklets, even though they're very visible, are serving their slight purpose, like protecting that area, whereas the tank traps in the car park are doing nothing except being covered by sand. Technically they would be easy, but both things you have to go through Cornwall Council, so it could take 2 years or 3 years.
Peter?
There's one particular tank trap that we want.
Yeah.
There is one.
This is a nice bit of colour. When those tank traps were being made, and we think they were made on the local beaches with moulds,
Yeah.
and the people that were making them, probably kids just before they went off to the war maybe, often inscribed little things into them with their fingers. And there's one on Crookwood's Beach which has got an inscription of "Fight the Good Fight," which we think is entirely appropriate.
How sweet. You went and scratched that in the other week, didn't you?
It just to say as well that the wave bench is not likely to be ready by June 2023 because the wood's got to season and all the rest of it, and then the bench has got to be made. So I think in principle what we want is to have that site as an accessible memorial with whatever's in it, kind of a bench, planting and so on, and then we can fit the tank traps and the wave bench in as we go.
Could you just confirm where this site is? This piece of ground?
Sorry, that one. It's that little square, this side of
Yeah,
the
can I also say that I disagree with that site because you can't see the people at the war memorial easily. Whereas the other side, on the other side, you can see it. It was designed for people in the Strand to see the war memorial. However, I'm just raising my objection, that's all.
Yes.
A lot of people are in favour.
I think that was a discussion that you had with the Royal British
Yeah,
Legion, and
I went and
that
met
was a
with them and
preferred-
discussed all the options with them, and they felt very happy with this side of the
Okay.
hill, and they felt that it was a bit more viewable.
Okay, well, it's up to them.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
fair enough.
absolutely, yeah. Katie?
I was just going to mention that as well. Like we literally on the day went up, and I stood at the top and someone stood at the bottom there, and we looked at how far up my body we could see the things. And it was like up to like my waist or something, with me standing next to it, and then someone standing down here. So yeah, we did go through that oversight with all the different options basically, and I think that this is the strongest place that we have. And I mean, we also, at the end of the day, we are, you know, this is asking a professional landscape person to come in and actually help us with this as well. And if there's like small changes, elements that they can do to help improve that visibility, then maybe they'll be telling us that as well. And hopefully, with the fact that the Royal British Legion is so entwined with this, that
Well, if they're happy, obviously,
basically,
I'm not going to object them.
I think part of it all as well, it's very important that we keep up a constant dialogue with the RBL and make sure they are
Yes.
happy with everything that's talked about. Yes?
Yeah, I just wondered if it's possible. I'd quite like to be involved with this because I can already imagine some of the symbolism
Yeah.
that could be put in it, like 3 of those tall upright little fir trees that you can get, provided they don't get too big, about 8 foot. Because 3 of those, you can get them in different hues, could symbolise like the Navy, the Army, the RAF, etc. If 2 benches are put there symbolising the V, you've got the V for victory, Rosemary Remembrance, etc. Those sorts of things could be wound into it. And when we were discussing the tree, you raised the point about slats for benches. If offcuts of the tree could be used to make slats for benches, because one of the things that's been said about wave bench type benches, particularly by older people, is the lack of back support. So you could have a wave bench and another bench like that. Yeah, and if you put some miscanthus in there, lower level stuff, you've got the movement, which could also be very symbolic. So there's quite a lot of things I think you could.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think all really good ideas, Vicky. And we will need somebody to sort of liaise and, yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Noted. So, any other questions? If not, I can't remember what you said earlier.
as in I propose
You're
that
going
we
to approve the resolution.
Approve the resolution. Sorry.
Recommendation.
Recommendation, sorry. Yes, wrong.
I second that.
Thank you. All those in favour? I'll get power one day. All those against? And abstain. Thank you. Okay, on to correspondence received.
Well, if I just mention the main items of correspondence and then the councillors, if ever you want to tackle those. We've had 2 items of correspondence about sewage and sewage discharge.
Yes.
We've had 8 items of correspondence about Meet the Councillor, which I know the Deputy Mayor has taken on board and responded to, and there's an item later on the agenda on that. The late bit of correspondence today was around allotment provision, and that's kind of partly relevant to an item 18 on the agenda. And I'll mention it as correspondence because we have had from Cornwall Council their consultation on changes to the community network panels, and that's so where someone, our councillor rep on that, Robin Turner, is, that's where she is this evening, and I know that Councillor Broy has something to say around that as well. So they're the items of which have come, some of which are elsewhere in the agenda.
Okay. Yes, Simon.
Just because there's a couple of items on sewage, quite different sides of the sewage story. One is about releases into the coast by the Seapool or ending in the Seapool. One, I believe, is to do with discharges directly into the river and canal. I do know a bit about this in my job, working for the Rivers Trust now, but I think it might be something that we can pick up at the Environment Forum. It's part of the environment policy we have to kind of do what we can as a council to influence and lobby those groups who are all those industries who are responsible for those kind of spills and regulations, and so that's something we could get into a bit more of a discussion about, and maybe even have a bit of a public meeting about it, because I know, again, through my job, there's a lot of communities getting very active in sort of defending their local rivers and streams against untreated sewage releases, and that's something that really does kind of welcome communities coming together and learning what can be done reasonably. So with the format we have with the Environment Forum, we could have a more open meeting. We don't have to have it around this table, so that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good.
And if you were happy, Keith, to give my details to those correspondents, then I could pick up a bit more of a detailed discussion about the whys and wherefores.
Right, okay, I will go on to the men's report. There's been lots going on behind the scenes regarding the warm rooms. Cal and lots of others are nearly at the point of pressing print on the winter information book. The technical name for this. Winter information.
We know what you mean.
Yeah.
What, where, when, guide?
What, where, when, there we are. So that will go out to all households in the parish Bude-Stratton area, detailing when and where spaces are available locally over the winter. Myself, Philippa, Jackie, Peter and Carol were all present at a meeting at Meatside this morning, where we met all the other volunteers who have stepped up to staff these various spaces throughout Bude. So it's amazing to see so many people there. It's really, really awesome. We've got upcoming remembrance services. There will be one in the Triangle on the 11th, obviously just for 11 a.m, as well as the Remembrance Day itself on Sunday the 13th. I'll be attending the service in Bude, and there is one in Stratton as well. I'm still waiting to find out what the time is, but it's earlier, I believe. So I'll send out an email to councillors because it would be lovely to have some representation at a couple of those services. And I'll leave it there. I did write other stuff down, but actually we've got some of these touch on items we've got anyway, so I will bore you with that a bit later on instead. Okay, so opportunity for Cornwall councillors present to discuss Cornwall council issues relevant to BSTC. So we've got Peter Boyd.
Thank you. So I had a confirmation, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, it was more than a few days ago, about the Drive EV2 project that Cornwall Council will be given something in the region of 20 million quid to lay on electric car charging points infrastructure throughout Cornwall. And good news and bad news, we're going to get 6 charging points, 3 on Crooklyn's car park and 3 on somebody's car park. But the bad news is they're only going to be 7 kilowatt chargers, which anyone who drives an electric car, you almost might as well charge it at home. You need the 50 kilowatt fast chargers, really, is what people need. So I've kicked up a little bit of a fuss about that, but been told that the underlying infrastructure of the cabling or the electrical network wouldn't support anything more than that. So we'll take it and be slightly disappointed.
I was shocked that they were taking away the electrical charging points on the...
I'm really disappointed. I've been asked by a member of the public about that.
I went and asked myself.
And I thought maybe you can help me, because I don't know whether, because I didn't realise, but the Competition and Mergers Authority had told the managing group MFG that owns that petrol station they had to sell it. Well, that was brought to my attention, I had no idea. But whether or not the removal of those is a reaction to that instruction, or whether the removal is because the underlying infrastructure wouldn't support that, I don't know. So maybe you...
Well, it wasn't ready to support it, but the cable was just outside of the road. They would have to put the cable in, so that wasn't the problem. It's just that Morrison's is the same group as now own land, and it's called, the competition is, there isn't competition. So they were, they were saying it had to be done, which I find quite bizarre. It implies that Morrison's are going to get some sometime, but I don't know where.
My honest feeling is, if that is the case, is it Monopoly?
The Monopolies Committee, yeah.
Commission, I think they've got it very badly wrong.
Certainly.
So I will be following that up. I have written to MFG asking for their version of events, but I get to hear from them.
The guys doing it, they've never taken one down yet. They've always put them up.
Well, especially one that hasn't even used.
I know.
That seems very odd. But anyway, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Can I get a bit of clarification about that? So the Esso garage, is it we talking about the Esso
Yes,
garage?
yes.
And they're taking them away?
They're gone.
Okay.
Right, so the community area network review, which the town clerk mentioned earlier, that's underway, and I think it's a drive from Cornwall Council's point of view to save some money by combining community area networks. The original proposal was that we were to be combined with Launceston. I made the point that I thought we had very little in common. I'm sure everyone from Launceston are lovely people, but I thought an inland market town had very little in common with effectively what is a seaside resort. So the only change that has been made to that is the proposals now has moved us to be paired with Camelford. Excuse me, which I still think really doesn't have an awful lot in common with us. The community area network that we have been proposed to have is a lot smaller than many others, so I think it's unlikely that they're going to change. I rewound to the very beginning on this, and I got in contact with a gentleman called Dave Wally, who some of you might know. And Dave Wally was the leader of Cornwall Council at the time the Unitary Authority was brought into place, and asked him his opinion on what was happening. And he said he felt it was a massive backward step, because he feared that localism and the principles of localism and the idea of bringing governance as close to the people of the community as possible is a really good thing, and that's what the community area networks intended to do. But to go backwards from that and increase those areas and decrease the amount of officer time that's available to those areas was a very bad thing. I personally feel, because we've got such little in common with Camelford, and again, nothing against Camelford, I'm sure they're lovely people, but I would find it very difficult to be involved in that sort of groups. I just find it very hard to wonder how you'd ever agree on things and do any significant work. And I did actually chair the Bude Community Area Network for 2 years, and I vice chaired it for 2 years. And it was quite difficult even then, because you've got communities as far north as Morwenstow, right the way down to Northampton, India, and then down to Crackington Haven in the south. So there's a very wide range of communities and quite a lot of difficulty involved in serving the interests of everyone. I feel the Cornwall Council should, if they can't afford to run it as it is, they probably should bin the idea and go a completely different route, which needn't cost money, and I just think they ought to be enhancing their relationships with parish and town councils, and getting closer to them and use those councils as their conduit to the community. But that's my point of view. There will be others. I do want to say a very few words about Kavanagh. Kavanagh Homes, the development. This is off my patch, it's Sean Tilby's patch. But they have managed to find a legal escape route from the demands of the Section 106 agreement that they entered into in order to provide land for community use. This land was to be given to the Scouts of Bude, but anyway, they have managed to wriggle out of it. Cornwall Council are doing a bit of navel gazing at their own legal team, and especially the Section 106 original agreement was felt to be written in a very weak way, but we're told that the legal team won't be able to look at it until spring next year. And I think that's the reason why things have gone wrong, it's because things are just timed out, and Cornwall Council have not acted in a timely manner. And I'm very upset about that, if I'm honest. And I think Kavanagh Homes themselves run a very high risk of their own reputation being damaged because they're certainly not supporting the communities in the way that they're expected to, or in fact agreed to. Exeter buses, we're now on the new timetable, so Exeter buses now split at Oakhampton, giving people the opportunity to get on the train at Oakhampton. We've had quite a lot of negative feedback on that, especially from less able people who believe that it's going to be much more difficult to make that journey. In particular, I've got a lady in Exeter who used to live in Bude, who's blind, registered blind, and she thinks it's going to be impossible for her to visit her family now. We've been raising this is the three councillors, Sean Tilby, Nikki Chopak and myself, with the transport team at Cornwall Council. I feel they're failing us. I feel the Cornwall Council are interested in routes that are wholly within Cornwall, routes that cross the border into Devon. For some reason they find too difficult to engage with, and I think we're suffering from that lack of interest in border communities. And I'm making that feeling known every time I possibly can. We do have a meeting set up with the portfolio holder on, it's a week on Monday. Let me get this right, yeah, a week on Monday, to discuss this further, and we hope to get a better understanding of what changes could be made to make it more acceptable, especially for disabled people. In the meantime, the three councillors, sometime next week, we're going to pick a day and all travel to Exeter on the bus and chat to people, and we're going to try to do the college bus. So we're going to take the early bus in, probably stop in Exeter and have a coffee and then come back again, just so we can talk to people using that service and find out what their personal experiences are. Bude Canal, I'm really pleased to say that after a very long time of talking about dredging, we actually have got full funding in place for a full dredge from Hill Bridge right the way down to the harbour area. And that is going to begin almost immediately. There could be, we hope, machinery on site from next week in the upper reaches. Some of that, as it comes back towards Bude, it goes into a triple SI area, and we have to get assent from Natural England. That assent has been applied for, but knowing what we know about Natural England, it may not be forthcoming as quickly as we'd hoped. I'll remind everyone that there are two invasive species on the canal, the zebra mussels and also Himalayan balsam, which means that any dredging exercise is not as straightforward as you might imagine. The embankment opposite where the Tourist Information Centre is, just the other side of the Falcon Bridge, was very badly damaged in the drought. It was damaged anyway. When the drought came, it collapsed significantly. We've currently got Cormac engineers working on options. Apparently the ground there is incredibly, what's the word, friable. It's loose sand with water running through it. And the engineers at the moment are thinking that some sort of sheet piling operation is going to be the only way they're going to be able to stabilise that bank. But we don't know yet, and there's no funding in place. Right, so we have to work that through. We'll get the designs costed, agreed, and then we'll look forward and get it funded from. We had a period of work on the breakwater over the summer, which Mr. Barrett is very well aware of. He's been documenting it. My feeling is that the work has been done to an incredibly poor standard. It's probably almost certainly not fit for purpose. I walked out on the breakwater last week with the harbour master. Some of the stonework around, just directly underneath the barrel on this side of Tommy's pit, has been repaired in a haphazard way. I think it's fair to say it's been done appallingly. The Victorian engineers would turn over in their graves, I'm sure, if they saw what was being done to that. I'm really not happy with it. My thinking on it at the moment is that the Harbours Authority just hasn't got the money to do what needs to be done to it. So I'm pushing very hard to find a pot of money to do a proper, in-depth, full engineering survey on the structure, so we know exactly what needs to be done to it going into the future. And once we've got that in place, then we can start thinking about funding what needs to happen to it into the future. And what I'm more interested in, and it's what we're also trying to do with the canal, is to bring the harbour and the canal together, so they're not managed under two separate entities, so they're talking better together, but also to have an ongoing management plan so that we don't end up in the situation that we're in now in 20 years' time.
Peter, Tommy's pit still drains.
Apparently they've poured tons of grout into it and they haven't found the gap. So the thinking is, at the moment, is that the embankment on the sea side of Tommy's pit is probably almost entirely hollow. And the only way to address it is to probably take it entirely to pieces, rebuild it with a solid core, and then reface it. But without doing that, it probably won't hold water. and I can say for sure there definitely isn't the budget to do that.
Can I say, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, until you get a proper survey,
Yeah,
you're quite right. I don't know. That's conjecture.
Not that I'm, a structural engineer, but you can see where the hole is if you go down there and the water is drained right out, and it's pluggable quite easily from the pool side.
Right.
So it is quite easy to do, but...
Okay, well, I'm meeting the harbour master next week. So hopefully, as part of the visit, we'll go down and look at that and I'll bring that to his attention.
Low tide. Just
So
when it comes in.
Not the harbour. I'm meeting with the harbour master, I'm meeting with the chairman of the harbour's board, the vice chairman of the harbour's board, and the maritime manager. So it's quite a big meeting next week. It's going on. We'll be talking a lot about the future of that.
Yeah, it's about the car charges, obviously. About, I guess, how much sway we have in terms of just design aspects of them, such as having cover. So when you try and plug in and type in your stuff, you're not getting rained on or whatever. If there's sign up or membership or payment methods on them, because some of them you have to sign up for a membership and it's a pay monthly thing rather than a just pay on the day type of thing. The location of the car parks, because obviously they need to be accessible, but you don't want people to be parking in them because it's the easiest car parking space, which is often what you find in these places. And also, isn't it no overnight parking down there? So if they are slow, then
Well, okay, so I can answer your question quite easily. I don't know the answers to any of that.
okay, great. But
I'm afraid, and I doubt whether we'll get the choice. We'll have what we're given.
okay.
But I can ask. I'm in touch with the project leaders.
Yeah, I guess send them my contact details if possible, because then we can start to find. Because it might just be that especially if they're not necessarily here, they might not know where people tend to park and things like. They probably do, but
Well, I'm
That's
annoyed because you'll remember I drove one of the co-cars up to York around about this time last year, and I'm guessing that will need to be done again fairly shortly, because he said it was about a year, didn't he? So we probably ought to give him a ring. But the only way to realistically recharge an electric vehicle is either at home on a slow charge or on a fast charger. And it's going to take about 40 minutes on a fast charger. You get it back up to about 80%.
Yeah, 7 kilowatts.
Then you can get back on the road.
Overnight.
But to put a 7 kilowatt charger into a car park, to my mind, is flipping stupid.
It's just
But because you'll get one car plug in the morning and they'll spend the day on the beach. So
Yeah.
you're going to charge 3 cars a day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put the proper infrastructure in, you could actually have a sensible turnover of cars.
Well, this is the other thing is in terms of positioning as well, because you need to think of scalability, and are we assuming there's going to be a nice fat one of those big transformers somewhere then? You're sticking a massive transformer, there's a bunch of sand going up in the dunes, is it going over there, is it going where the building is? There's a lot of questions that I'm not necessarily sure how much has been thought through, so it'd be good to at least, rather than being judgmental about it, it'd be great to have a discussion about it basically.
I can try, but I doubt we'll get anywhere. I have to be honest. I've sent my original thoughts to the team that's doing it, and they've basically told me to get lost. So, but I'll try again. I'll say it's raising the council.
Just introduce me basically. Yes.
Just a minor, on the damaged area of the canal, a particularly bad bit, one of the things that caused a lot of the initial damage before the drought got hold of it was the launching of various craft, paddle boards, canoes, etc., etc. Now, either it needs to be repaired to a standard which will withstand that, or there needs to be some enforcement action so that people don't launch their paddle boards from that particular place, which is the most convenient place and it's most accessible from the car park. But that is what caused an awful lot of the initial damage way before the drought set in.
So I've asked the outdoor manager who's responsible for that project to integrate into the design a mini slipway to do exactly what you're saying. So it's just, basically, what I'm imagining, although I'm not the designer, that there will be a bit where the canal is let back into the embankment, and you'd probably be able to step almost knee-deep into the water, pick watercraft in, and it's all appropriately reinforced, and then launch off from there. But yeah, if the council's charging activity providers and independent people to use the canal, they've got to provide a sensible launch point that isn't going to damage the infrastructure. Agree. Well done.
Lovely, thank you. So key issues from you councillors, please. Yes, Katie?
I've got updates regarding the bus.
Oh, yeah.
Because apparently, it was only yesterday that there's just been a few updates. So yeah, additional services on Sundays and public bank holidays that are operated by Go Cornwall. Additional service from Oakham Station to Bude for at 6 p.m. for Exeter College, basically. I know that ConnectViews have like been making their own timetables effectively for like which bus services are serving which bits and who and etc. So I could just like distribute that around. But then I know that again Stagecoach having issues with. I got told yesterday that there's currently some roadworks around Marma Church or something, and that students from Bude Haven are being literally dropped off at the bottom of the hill in the storm, you know, no pavements or anything, and being asked to walk up just because there's some roadworks somewhere and they've decided not to, you know, take them to an alternative route or anything like that. Basically, there's obviously quite a lot of ongoing issues around Stagecoach. And once you have one, then people are going to be coming forward with more issues around that company because now they know there's a thing going thing. So it's really frustrating because at the end of the day, it's a private company. They do what they can for their shareholders. That's their priority, and that's it. So again, I guess it's ensuring that if members of the public do have those sorts of issues, like you shouldn't expect your kids to walk up in the dark during, you know, a named storm, like at the bottom of a massive hill, and there isn't any lighting or path or anything. And probably not in proper coats because they're school uniform coats and things like that. You know, anything like that, I think they just send it through because at the end of the day, you talking to Stagecoach isn't going to do it. It's ultimately, it is supposed to be a Cornwall Council thing that they pick up the slack. It's like, it's basically down to their responsibility that they pick up the slack, that is the services. So, yeah, that's that one anyway, and we can do with the roads later.
Yeah, so I just want to respond to Councillor Good because I've been struggling with the bus service, right? Because you say it's Cornwall Council's responsibility. What Cornwall Council officers are telling me is that bus services are not a statutory obligation, so they don't have to run them. And the services that we have are deemed to be commercial services. So basically, if they don't pay, the bus companies can choose not to do them. So in an ideal world, I get what you're saying. I think we should be entitled to fair access to connectivity, to go places. Reality is, doesn't support that.
At the end of the day, like, Team Bloomers have been put into various levels of Parliament, and they were told, like the government told everyone years ago, the fact that public, like these bus services don't have to be serviced anymore, they can be ran for, like private companies can come in and start takeover and start like privatising the entire lot. And that's the point that we've got to, is they're privatising, and still obviously, you know, it's still their responsibility of the directors of that company to make the most profit. And it is lobbying Cornwall Council, and it is lobbying the MPs as well, central government. But let's be honest, like the only people that be able to do anything around here is going to be Cornwall Council because like Team Blue isn't going to do much for us.
My understanding is that Cornwall is one of the few areas in England anyway that's actually got the devolved transport responsibilities. So that's why Transport for Cornwall exists, and that's why most of the buses in Cornwall are branded and run as Transport for Cornwall. And the fact that Bude, I mean, coming back to your point of being a kind of a border town, is not getting the same kind of service and, you know, response from Cornwall Council, I think that is something that, you know, that we need to they can't outsource their responsibility to us entirely because we are part of Cornwall, you know, even though we have the nerve to occasionally creep into Devon.
I would say at the
Just go to Kevin and then over to
Yeah, my understanding, and I haven't got this from Stagecoach, I've got this second hand, so it might not be correct, but I believe it to be correct, is that Stagecoach were originally effectively subsidised on that route to take people from this area to the train station. Now, that train station wasn't specified to be Exeter St David's. When Oakhampton, I was probably the only person in this room, and perhaps the only person in Bude to consider totally irrelevant to Bude. I think it's a complete red herring, notwithstanding what any other organisation would say. But when that reopened, Stagecoach saw that as an opportunity to cut the service dead at Oakhampton, save themselves a few quid. And there's nothing in any kind of contract that can be enforced that can make them go. They've basically got to take people from this area to the nearest train station. They've got a contract to do that, which is subsidised, and it's a long-standing agreement. But doesn't have to be Exeter. It can stop at Oakhampton. So to me, this is a negative consequence of the reopening of Oakhampton railway station. And whoever tries to spin it differently is, in my opinion, just plain wrong, because there should be choice. You should be able to get off and get on the train, or stay on a bus and go into Exeter. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr Jennings?
With the buses,
Yeah.
you can get to Exeter twice on a Sunday. I went down Cornwall last weekend. You can't get out of Bude and go south on a Sunday. So surely the council should be trying to make sure we can go south. We can get to Exeter. There's buses to Exeter. You can't go south on a Sunday. I was down right down the bottom last weekend. Sunday, you can go anywhere. Go right to Cornwall. Till you get to bloody White Bridge. And it stops. You're in Patchville. You can get to, there's about 4 or 5 buses on a Sunday. Take you to bloody Bodmin and on down, Bodmin Parkway and that. You're stuck. You know, it's extra served. It's the south we've got to sort out.
Thank you.
And also the other point is, because they've opened Exeter Station now, there'll be less people using the bus from Oakhampton to Exeter. In the end they'll say, well, that didn't pay, we'll stop the bus altogether. Open Oakhampton Station, I can't see it's going to do Bude any good at all.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Jackie, did you
Oh, sorry,
want to say
finish that
something?
topic. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, if you want a little bit more information about warm rooms and
yeah.
stuff, let's go for the notes. So there's 2 elements to it. So the brochure that was started by Martin Dory, so thanks to him for getting the ball rolling. And Cal's done a huge amount of work on getting it ready to go to print tomorrow. To be delivered hopefully week commencing 14th of November. It will be all recycled paper. We are getting the Cornwall-wide guide, or the rest of the Cornwall guides, and they will go out with the Bude-specific, Bude-Stratton, they've done specific guide. So the 2 together, the generic one and the more local one, will be, hopefully they'll complement each other. There will be 6,000 copies of each, and I think because of the issues that Carol's come across with getting them distributed by Royal Mail, we're hoping to use an army of people to get them through every door in the parish, which, thanks to all the people that have, from all the councillors that have come forward to distribute a bunch. Then the open house, so we're collaborating very strongly with the Neat Side, which is, I think, a great thing in itself. Neat Side started their warm room on Tuesday first. We hopefully will have an offering at Parkhouse Centre on Monday and Friday from the 21st of November, if not before. There will be, so Neat Side is actually leading on it. They will be engaging a coordinator but that coordinator will have responsibility for Neatside, the Park House Centre and the Tree in Stratton, which will be open between Tuesday to Saturday. And that coordinator will also sort of have be organising all the other provision in those rooms, like toy library, debt advice, and anything else that sort of will help people come into those rooms, and craft and all sorts of things. Should be quite good. As Anna said, the volunteer morning this morning was great. Lots and lots of people sitting on the floor room only by the end. So yeah, really good, very positive, and yeah, looking forward to starting our own provision.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Jane. Yes, Peter.
Sorry, we were all in that meeting together, and there were some representatives planning to volunteer who are not from the Bude-Stratton parish boundary, and they were asking the question, if you remember, well, will we get a leaflet? And we said, well, sorry, but you probably won't. And I just wondered whether the town clerk would be prepared to share the details of what we're doing with all the other parish clerks in our area. And perhaps if they wanted to print it and deliver it in their own parishes, that we could share the print files with them maybe.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. Okay, yes, Katie.
I mean, the other thing that we could also be doing is just translating that document onto our webpage as well.
I think it was.
On my webpage.
It was, yeah,
That'd be-
definitely.
Yeah, so it should be a lot
Live
more accessible.
updates.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no other lead,
Well, actually, on behalf of Councillor Corrigan-Turner, who had to give apologies, that really did want to be here, I think she did want to just raise the fact that she is still busy working on the health survey that she undertook, and so she's doing a lot of analysis work on that.
yeah.
But is also battling hard with the NHS powers that be around their view of the unit and the overnight service. So it's still very hard work, and she's still quite concerned as to, not that, but actually understanding the local need.
Yeah.
But she was persisting with the survey to present them from understanding.
On to public participation then, please. So any comments or questions concerning the business of the current council? Yes, Mr James.
You've taken away the tag traps from Crooklands Beach. What are you going to put in their place?
Oh.
Because they were put there for a reason.
Yeah.
I was just going to say to Peter, it's one, isn't it?
Sorry, with your indulgence, the original plan was one,
Yes.
and that one that was going to be removed was agreed with by the beach ranger at the time called Jolyon Sharp.
Oh, well, then if you've got that trap involved in it, then you really are in trouble.
And it's not in front of the sea defence bit, it's in front of the shored up concrete wall, so it won't harm, we believe, to take it away.
Well, I hope so. Because there was a reason they put them there, was that's the place that gets hammered. And it does get hammered there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Hello.
just on the subject of the sewage, if I
Sure.
may.
Of course.
Well, thank you for the chance for speaking to you today about this. We've all heard most recently on the news about the impact of sewage on our coasts and on our beaches around Cornwall and around Devon as well. Not least the spill at St Agnes, you might have seen on TV, which flooded the whole area with brown sewage, completely disgusting. It was actually filmed by a passer-by. This was reported not just around the whole country, but really actually around the world, which is quite amazing. My point really, regrettably, is that there is another source of pollution much closer to home that is not being reported on. It's something really people are not talking about at all. So I believe I've spotted something that really is hiding in plain sight, this source of pollution. The problem really, when everyone's talking about is septic tanks, and particularly that they are discharging into the river and the canal, which people probably don't know about. A few of you who live near the canal might know about this. Really, I would call these the silent stinkers in our community. These outfall all year round. We were talking, I was talking just a minute ago with Peter, and he was talking about combined sewage overflows. There is other things whereby the sewage main overflows into the sea. Well, in the case of private septic tanks, some of these, which I mentioned here, are actually, they outfall all year round. These are not just things that outfall in times of heavy rain. What have I got here? I've said that you'll note really that some of these which no longer have blue flag status, which I think everyone will be very disappointed about. Blue flag status is a symbol of the high quality of the beach and facilities. That has gone, and really, to my mind, one of the reasons it has gone is because of these septic tanks that are outfalling into the river and into the canal. Cornwall Council refers to the canal as an award-winning, unique site with outstanding habitats, a rural gem which stretches into the heart of the Bude. I'm sad to say that because of the septic tanks, the silent stinkers as I call them, the rural gem has become an open sewer flowing into the centre of Bude. So in the Hill Valley, just 2 miles away from here, where the headwaters of the canal are feeding, there are approximately 17 properties which are outfalling sewage into the river. This is not a new phenomenon, it's been going on in some cases for many decades, but the problem has been highlighted recently by a change in the law, which has meant that untreated outfalls, so outfalls from old-fashioned septic tanks, these are now not just morally wrong, but they're actually illegal. And yet, as I say here, the septic tanks continue to pump out day and night, and this is into both the river and the canal. So my friends, septic tank outfalls should not be allowed to continue in this way. It's entirely possible that, by my calculations at least, the 17 properties together could outfall, and this is quite amazing, 1 million litres of sewage in a year, in just 1 year. So that's enough to fill an Olympic swimming pool in a bit less than 2 years. Unfortunately, I've met resistance in my efforts to solve this problem. When confronting the producers, I've been told, your opinion doesn't matter. I've been told, that's just clean water coming out of there. I've also been told, I don't need to comply with anything. So these are some of the points from the people who are owning these tanks. My friends, this pollution is not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of fact, and it's also a matter of public health. Now, some would say that upgrading the septic tanks to meet the current rules would be good enough. But I think we need to be more ambitious than this. We need to get rid of sewage from the canal for good. We should also be looking, if possible, at having the main Bude treatment works upgraded with ultraviolet, which kills bacteria. This is something which I believe it doesn't have, something which a lot of other sewage works in other towns in Devon and do have. So despite that this outfalls on the beach, near the beach, it doesn't have the bacteria and virus killing ability. So I'm going to need your help to solve this. We need to clean up the river, we need to clean up the canal and clean up the sea for the benefit of everybody who lives here and who visits here. We need to get rid of the silent stinkers. So I'll be seeking the help of and the advice of the council to make an application to South West Water. That's under section 101A of the Water Quality Act, to have every property in the Hill Valley, just east of here, near the canal, connected to a sewage main so that no sewage is ever again discharged knowingly, unknowingly, and in some cases uncaringly, into what Cornwall Council has aptly called this rural gem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think going back to Simon's suggestion earlier is, very, very good idea.
Can I just alert my learned colleague who's chair of planning that I think the trout lake along the canal, which used to belong to John Hicks, which was sold to Paul Watson, that overflows into the canal. Those septic tanks now, that's before they go for planning. Just they don't have a link to the main sewer, obviously. Just so you are aware.
Yes, Kelly.
I mean, 'twas ever thus, I'm afraid to say. I have a little bit of history going back into the 1990s when attempts were found, were attempts to link pipes of unknown origin poking out of riverbanks and canal banks back to particular properties were made. And it's been an ongoing problem for many decades. It's got worse because there are more properties getting built which don't have proper sewage links, and then when you get periods of exceptional rainfall, that then discharges into the river and the canal. And I personally would be very supportive of South West Water, the Environment Agency, and other getting involved, but as I said, there's a great deal of history here, and to the best of my knowledge, there are still pipes which poke out of the canal, and nobody has a Scooby-Doo where they're connected, and most of the time, nothing comes out of them, and every so often, all kinds of unmentionables come out. And it does need resolving, but kind of good luck, mate, you know.
Thank you.
Yes.
Could I have the gentleman's name? And
Oh, Mr. Godwin from Hill Mill.
Oh, okay.
Godwin.
Yeah, no, I've got that.
Thank you.
Phone number?
Hold it up on the sheet.
Yes, Simon.
Yeah, just I think it'd be great to pick this up under the Environment Forum, Environment Change Forum. So if you can liaise with Keith, or if you can send those details through. Regarding the issues on the beach, we know that the beach at Bude, I don't think somebody's ever had a blue flag. A lot of the issues are to do with the river, and a lot of that is, runoff, whether it's got slurry in it or not. The mud basically causes water failures, but that doesn't mean that we can't do everything we possibly can. And I think we'll have a lot of allies in a kind of holistic plan to clean up the river from sewage spills, septic tanks, and farm runoff as well.
Just as a point to make, I believe, as far as bacteria analysis goes, the Environment Agency tests certainly the Hill Mill end of the canal. They test it once every 5 years, and when they did test that, it failed in a really baroque fashion.
Yeah. Okay.
If I happen not to make the environmental forum, one of the outcomes I really hope comes of this is that we lobby very hard for the bathing season to be extended all year round.
Carry on, don't worry about you, carry on.
You're getting on, sit down for 5 minutes, and
Did you want to? Yeah.
Just a couple of things. I'm glad to see you're flying the Ukrainian flag again, because you had a long period when it wasn't flying, which is not really what I know you want or what the country wants. They're in a bad place. And the other thing is, my friend Mr. Sultan, I've known Ian probably since the year 2000 when you came back to Bude, having worked in London. He's a very capable gentleman, and I'm sure you know that. And I must take the credit that when you agreed that you would advertise for a deputy clerk, I spoke to Ian after the meeting and I said, you want to apply, you need to apply for that job, because you're just the man.
Thank you, Chris.
Did you arrest him?
Yes, many a time.
Thank you.
I just want to say a few words about the breakwater, really. I didn't intend to, so I've just written down a few things. It's come up recently, it's been mentioned in public that there is no maintenance plan for the breakwater, which I found astonishing. It's been there long enough, it's had enough attention paid to it over the years. For there not to be a maintenance plan, somebody has really dropped the ball there. But we are where we are. As regards the recent work, there should have been an inspection done. There should have been a report as a result of that inspection. There should have been a method statement produced as to what work they were going to do and why. There should have been a costing for that, and it should have been signed off. I would be really interested to know how much of that has been done and whose name is on it, because they could do with a lashing or finding an alternative career, I think. Councillor Tilsey mentioned that he could see the leak from the inside. I've been taking a personal interest in this for some time, and a sort of the best Heath Robinson fashion that I can. And I actually went down there with a laser level, and I don't know, there were some holes that you could see from the inside of Tommy's pit when it was empty, but the biggest leaks that I can see are visible from the seaward side. And if you look from the seaward side towards Summerlees Beach, there are some massive stones missing low down on the right-hand side, from which a permanent stream of water comes out. And also, if you stand on the breakwater and look out to sea, when there is a bit of water in Tommy's pit, it leaks pretty much along the whole width of that piece. So when Peter said that essentially he thinks the thing could